Yes, and we are back after the break, continuing with our discussions, taking a look at Uganda's tea production, Uganda's tea industry. One of those, if you're to break down Uganda's tea, exports in terms of cash crops, tea is one of those. Tea, coffee, talk of vanilla and the rest. And surely it is one we're actually looking deep into this particular tea sector. Meanwhile, now, if you're to look down at the figures of tea exportations and all that, I believe most of you would be interested in knowing that as well. But first, I would want to ask here Mr. Robert Ejiku to at least help me understand. Just recently here, there was a report that was released that Rwanda is having a step ahead. It was just simply dry as that. Rwanda is having a step ahead of the other East African community countries in regards to tea exportation. And I was like, which step is Rwanda? Because if you look at Kenya having some of if you're to look at the number of tea estates in Kenya, you could clearly say Kenya should be ahead, or Uganda definitely. But which step ahead is Rwanda?
Yeah, tea in Rwanda is a serious business.
Okay.
And the Rwandan government takes it very seriously. Mm-hmm. In fact, to let you know how serious that is, that tea is taken in Rwanda, I'll give you an example. In Rwanda, when they import fertilizer for both security and mismanagement issues, the application of these fertilizers is actually supervised by army men in their estates where they're going to apply this fertilizer. So all the fertilizer goes into the garden, and that will have an impact on the productivity, the quality of the product. Now Rwanda has other inherent or inborn advantages. Like most of it is hills. They call it the area of 1,000 hills, the land of 1,000 hills, as you know. So the tea that grows in that area is generally slow growing and then very well concentrated, therefore high quality. Okay. Now that quality leaf can also be wasted in the factory through poor processing. But the Rwandans have invested heavily in that area. They have harnessed what is in the field and made that quality even better in the factories, and they are selling. So in terms of where that the Rwanda tea is, I would say it without an iota of doubt that Rwanda tea is the highest quality tea in this region. And the region I'm talking about is right from Malawi all the way to Ethiopia, where we grow tea. That includes Kenya, which is our biggest producer of black teas. And right now, the biggest exporter of black teas in the world, it's Kenya. Kenya produces 85% of the teas that we sell through the Mombasa auction. And Uganda comes second with the 10%. And Rwanda comes in with about 3%. And then the rest is split between Tanzania, Ethiopia, Malawi, Burundi, and so on. So in terms of quality, you place Rwanda at the top. When Rwanda is getting $5 for a kilo, Kenya is probably getting $3.5, $4. And then Uganda will be below $2. And that tells you how much we're not investing in that area to harness all these opportunities that exist in the industry. Well, we might be happy that as a cash crop, if you consider coffee, our traditional cash crops, cotton, tea and others, the tea is still second to coffee. But you see the difference. I will give you figures. Coffee, perhaps last year, I think we got over $700 million. Tea worked in over $200 million also last year.
In terms of exports?
Which is just about half, yes, in terms of exports.
Which shows you,
so you're looking at foreign exchange, you're getting up 700 million from coffee. Okay. Tea brought in about $200 million.
That's good. Some good figures.
That's a good figure. Now, so we really need something to be done in this country to be able to begin to compare with Rwanda. Okay. For instance, Kenyans even go to Rwanda to benchmark. We go to Kenya as Ugandans to benchmark in Kenya. Okay. But what Kenya is doing is far ahead of what we're doing. So we really need to do something as a country to be able to get to those levels and actually get the proper benefits from tea. And if we go to those levels, I think the tea farmer traditionally has been assumed in those communities where tea is grown as a rich person, they will be the richest people you can have in this country.
I have an issue with consumption of Ugandan products in Uganda, and I would believe, if you're a viewer out there, we've got this issue of consuming our own goods. Back in the time when Uganda, the Ugandan government had to introduce the Buy Uganda, Build Uganda policy, was to see that we buy more and consume more of Ugandan-made products. But when you go into supermarkets, you will be surprised that you will still find products that we can manufacture here or that are processed in the country, but then being outcompeted by products that are exported, that are imported into the country. Now, with the issue of tea, why do you think we're still facing a very huge challenge with people consuming our own tea at home?
First, I think it's a colonial mistake, if I may use that phrase.
Okay.
Tea was introduced to Uganda by the British in 1905. Actually, the first tea bush, they planted it in the botanical gardens. It's still there up to now. If you want to see it, I can take you to it. And when they introduced this cash crop called tea, the intention was to have this tea taken to Europe, to England, export for English tea, as we know it.
Okay.
So they were really getting these cash crops because, you know, from history, the way Europeans moved around the world looking for items like tea, cloves, and so on, and they were taking them, spices, and they were taking them to Europe. So tea established in Uganda because of the perfect conditions. They said now we have a source of tea to be taken to Europe.
Okay.
So even up to today, the United Kingdom is one of our biggest buyers of tea. In fact, from our Mombasa auction, United Kingdom comes number 5 in terms of volumes of tea that they buy from Mombasa auction. A lot of it also is coming from Kenya. You remember, Kenya is the real big guy here. So tea was structured in a way that everything you manufactured was really for export. The companies were equally structured that way. The initial plantations that were set up here were set up by the British. They were set up by Indians. Because when the Indians came here, tea had already been several years ahead in India. So when they came here and said, oh, you mean we can also produce tea here? They started producing tea. Some of it, surprisingly, was going back to India because of the high population they were still there. But a lot of it was going to the UK. So that structure alone made the tea in very many ways a little bit expensive, above the reach of the ordinary Ugandan. Now we need to start looking at our purchasing power. If you talk about the kilo of tea that an ordinary UK citizen buys, it probably not many Ugandans can afford that. Today the middle class will buy, those who are above what we call the poverty level will afford to buy some tea. But it reached a point that we were only left with what in the tea sector technically called off grades to be sold in our markets. They are sold probably using cups, they are packed in small or whatever. You remember Brookbond tea at that time, it used to pack from Kenya and come in here. I think they even eventually set up a plant here, and then they were packing those small things, those what could afford. There is a big question of purchasing power. It's probably because of our poverty levels in this country. Then number 2, the question of promoting our own markets. Bubu has come, and we are really grateful that we're now talking Bubu, because previously we did not invest in marketing our own products here. We were so taken up by this whole thing of we need to get foreign exchange, we need to promote exports. So we never really paid attention to promoting it here. So you find that it is only very recently, like the companies that I now speak for, the companies I speak for are able to sell between 10 to 15% of their product here, but otherwise they were exporting 95% until very recently. So what that means is the way the market, the business is structured to serve a certain market that's out there. And we spend a lot of our marketing budgets to even promote ourselves more out there, with the discovery of new markets that now affect us, like Russia. Russia, which now consumes between 10 to 15% of the tea produced around the world, black tea produced around the world. It's now a very big market we go to every other time we want to promote ourselves. Of course, now with the conflict, there is a problem in that market. So generally, it is the structure that has affected how much tea our people take. Number 2 is purchasing power. Number 3 is we don't put in a lot of efforts to do our own boo-boo with our products, because we used to a certain secure, we call them secure. This is expensive, because if you're going to start marketing in here, you see the way service industry markets, the big companies, Airtel, MTN and so on, the way they market their airtime would be the same way you should invest in marketing your tea.
Okay.
One company will say, I'm not going that way. I have a secure place, I'll put this on lorries, it will get to Mombasa, my broker is going to sell it, and it's going there, my dollars will be coming, if I can say from that. So I think slowly but surely the industry is now moving towards, in fact, we do make more money when we sell our tea locally.
Okay.
When we sell our tea locally, we do make money, because we now cut out all these other costs for warehousing, transport and the other. We do pay VAT, all right, that is okay, but we make more money when we are able to sell. But the market isn't that developed, so we need to invest in developing our local markets so that we have more people taking tea. So we have to promote this product. You see, in Europe, I was in Europe some years back, and all we did was to promote on roadsides the taking of a particular variety of tea. And roadside shows are a common phenomena in Europe, in America and the other places. They are very, very common phenomena, and that's the way they are promoting. So we've seen our own local companies here doing huge promotions. Let's mention it, Movit, Samona, these guys in the cosmetics industry. They do a lot of promotion. That's the level of engagement we need as tea companies to do that. Now, where I speak from is from the producer. We have that terminology, from the producer's point of view. The producer sometimes sells this tea in the local market, and there is a blender or packer who is here in this country. I will mention a few. The Eagle Holdings, the Eagle Investments, the people who do Garden Tea, there are different brands, Mukwano Tea and so on.
Yes.
Those buy their teas locally. They source them mostly locally.
Okay.
Until recently, I think a few started buying from Rwanda just to get another premium quality tea. And then some buy from Kenya. But these local companies here, which do the blending and what, need to invest in that. But they also have capacity challenges. They have financial issues, because the investments first are huge. And then now you need to invest in marketing. And that's also a lot of money that you need, and that money isn't there anymore.
Okay. All right, now let's break down the challenges that the industry is facing.
Yes.
I do believe, like you say, coffee is always being looked at as one of the bigger picture in terms of agriculture exports. But when you look at the industry of tea, what do you believe are some of the challenges that really need to be addressed?
Yeah. I would start from where I stopped, because I already talked about finance.
Yes.
The cost of finance is just far too expensive here. And
Okay.
tea industry, because of the nature it is structured, and because of its structure, you need money to put in investing in new facilities for processing tea.
Okay.
You need money to buy fertilizers. You need money to do all this, and this money in business, you have to borrow it from somewhere. If you look at our interest rates here, they're some of the highest, not only in the region, probably in the world. Now, that makes our money very, very difficult to get and too expensive.
Okay.
And these expenses, when they go into the business, they rake it down.
Okay.
So that's challenge number one. Number two is the point on fertilizers. Tea is a foliage crop, so we harvest the leaves and they must grow back. And for them to grow back, they need a nitrogen-based fertilizer, the NPK, 25-5-5, maybe combinations can change depending on what soil analysis results you've gotten for a particular area. So once you don't apply fertilizer, and then your production will go down, your quality will go down. The leaves will no longer be as soft as you wanted them to be, because what's in the softness, technically, the processing aspects that happen in the factory can happen and deliver you that high quality Rwanda type of tea only if the leaf you're getting from the field is of a certain quality. Now, without fertilizers, you can't do that. Recently, the tea farmers and plantations have been buying fertilizers in bulk at about 115 to about 135, depending on where you're sourcing it.
That is Ugandan shillings.
Ugandan shillings.
Okay.
And then Russia happens, Ukraine happens, and a few other things, COVID and so on, the prices jumped from 135 to 215 to 250.
Okay.
Now what that meant is that the plantations could no longer afford fertilizers. Those who had it in stock were able to apply in the last season, but the majority never applied fertilizers in the last season. That is going to affect how much tea we can produce this year. I can say without a shadow of doubt that this year's production is going to be much lower because of that lack of fertilizer application.
Okay.
Now we are all planning as tea factories, how do we really manage to get fertilizer? We've seen government coming in with subsidies in fertilizers for different for other crops.
Okay.
But we would like to see that the farmers and even the plantations get some kind of help here. Otherwise, our production is going to be affected. Now, all these GDP figures we are reporting, the amount of production we have in a country in a year, the value is going to be lower just because we can't get that from the soil. The soils are there, they're tired. They need fertilizers, and we apply a split application, which means we apply every season. So we have 2 seasons, we apply in the 2 seasons of rain. But this has not only been a problem to us, but the Kenyans solved it with that small subsidy to boost production. I know right now when we talk to the economists, they say, no, we don't want subsidies because of ABCD. But if a subsidy is going to enhance production in the way that I have described, or enhance manufacturing so that you can have even a much more goods being produced, then I think that's going to be a very useful subsidy that you can give. The Kenyans have done it, the Rwandese have done it, Tanzania did it the other day. So we hope that attention will be paid there. And that's the seriousness we talk about when we say government must step in, because production is going down and it's beginning to be costly for us to be in this industry. We will see companies collapsing, and that will happen. That's fertilizers. And relatedly, again now, these are so related in the quality is a very big challenge. Why quality? Because we also don't have a policy. That's a challenge. We have supervising ministries, the Ministry of Agriculture, then we have Ministry of Trade, because we have a component which is more like trade, because we export this material. Then there is a production where the farmer falls. We have 2 supervising ministries that think tea is self-regulating, doesn't need a policy. It actually does need a policy. Where is policy going to help us? In a planned development and improvements in the sector. If we don't have a policy in place, everything is left on its own. With the problems that sugar industry faced recently, in the recent past, with smallholders of what they call outgrowers of sugar cane and whatnot, having where to sell their sugar cane, and the trucks being packed at sugar cane manufacturing plants for over 2 weeks without any sale. These problems will begin to affect us in tea industry. There have been some interventions, and in fact, I must thank government. They made the first major intervention in tea in 2001. What they did is they brought in planting materials, and actually I was in the group that facilitated the importation of planting material from Kenya. And when we brought in that material, we distributed it to a few locations within among the smallholders. They proliferated that, and it is probably some of the highest yielding clones we had from Kenya.
Yes.
And that has helped the tea industry to have production more than multiplied by 20 times from 2001 to now. I will give you the figures if I can. So what is now therefore happening is we have the tea, we can't process it. And we need to set up a factory. Then at the other level, when the tea volumes go down, then we have many competitors in the field, and they no longer care about the quality. So we keep on destroying our quality. Once you destroy quality for 1 season, you're destroying quality for a generation. Why? Because the farmer is now used to selling this tea at a certain quality, managing his garden in any way he wants, because after all he gets paid for some sort. But they are being paid less. They are being paid less than what they deserve. We can earn more than our soils are perhaps some of the best. We even have the highland areas where we grow tea. Buwezi, we talk about Kabale, Kisoro, talk about areas of Mpungu, where we are setting up a new factory. These are highland areas where the quality of tea should be extraordinary. But we are not able to harness all this because that policy that organizes this sector is also lacking. Research. Like I told you, we brought in clonal tea in 2001, and most of this clonal tea was brought from Kenya.
Okay.
Why? Because the Kenyans did the research, but they didn't adapt that research for our soils.
Okay.
But anyway, the plants did grow. We have promoted them, and they are growing everywhere. We've recently taken some to Zombo. That's what is now being grown, mostly those clones. But if we had a research station at Rebitawa in Kabarole, I think Rebitawa is in Kabarole, or in Chenjojo, Rebitawa doing adaptive research. Maybe we don't have the facilities at the moment doing adaptive research, and then we see what clones would best do here and can give us maybe 2-3 times more.
All right.
In terms of product.
But lastly, the way forward, as we're winding up with this discussion, what is the way forward for some of these challenges that you believe should be implemented?
In our discussion, I've actually been saying what needs to be done. What needs to be done. I've said if we can't address the problem of fertilizers, then we're going to see what tea can contribute to this economy going down. We're going to see jobs lost.
All right.
We're going to see incomes going down for households. You already mentioned there are 50 to 60,000 households.
Over 150.
And each of those households has we did a research in the areas in Southwestern, has a farm family size of 7.
Okay.
Yeah, that is the farm family size. So we need to make capital affordable. I know there has been some money put in UDB to help, like if you want to expand, that money is there, but that money is still expensive. Okay. There was an agricultural credit facility that commercial banks handled through Bank of Uganda. Bank of Uganda give them some money, and then that was cheaper money compared to what they have now said UDB do. They are a business, so they must make some money in that business and be sustainable, because the Uganda government is not going to keep putting in these trillions until for their entire existence.
All right. And then lastly, your final remarks as we are winding up with our discussion to the viewers out there who've been watching.
Yeah, I want to thank you for inviting me to Smart 24. And I want to thank the viewers who have been able to watch this. There is so much that we can do as a country, not only to grow the tea sector, but even the related sectors, but the agricultural sector. Uganda as a country enjoys some of the most suitable arable land for agriculture. So there is no reason why agriculture should not be the highest contributor to the GDP of Uganda. We have smaller countries with little land. They don't even have a quarter of what we have, where agriculture is their leading contributor to GDP. Right now we talk about manufacturing, but if you look at, if the economists did their figures well and the statisticians, the contribution actually from agriculture, if you add on the related industry that rely on the primary agricultural fields, it's much more than they now project as 24 or estimate as 24% to GDP. So we can't do it, and it's easy for us to achieve that. Thank you.
All right. And you know what they say, anytime is tea time. And you can definitely grab yourself a cup of tea this morning. It's been cold, and you can at least warm up yourself. Maybe do a cup of coffee or do tea at any time. I've been having the Chief Executive Officer of Uganda Tea Development Agency Limited, that is Robert Ejiku, who has actually been giving us an insightful discussion, conversations regarding Uganda's tea industry and Uganda's tea production. And with that, I'm coming back with sports business. Good morning.